Hey guys, what is up and welcome to a new League of Legends video. So there recently was a post by a writer talking about the overhaul of many of the AP items. And the list is actually quite huge in terms of what they're changing and how they're changing it. So throughout this video, I want to go through every single change of the items, make it as easy to understand as possible, and also give you my thoughts on each of the change. But before we go into all the changes, let's talk about why they're changing these items to begin with. So the main issue that they see is the fact that right now people just opt for the raw AP items, which almost always include the 3 needlessly large rod items. And by the way, NLR is standing for needlessly large rod. So because of that, there's not enough item diversity. There's only a handful of items ever bought on AP champions. And on top of that, they feel like a lot of the champions that heavily benefit off of these raw burst AP items are mainly being played over many of the other choices. And they also feel like the 3 items that are built from NLR are just simply too strong, giving them also way too much utility. So for instance, a Luden's Echo and a Zanya Zaroglass giving you 120 AP while also giving you a bunch of utility stats. So what they aim to do with these changes is increase the amount of potential build paths throughout the AP items and create much more options rather than confining players to just a handful of items. So they'll also nerf down the large rod items while also bringing up the power of the other AP items. And the final thing is that they're trying to make some build paths of certain items feel much better and smoother. So the first major thing to talk about is going to be, of course, the new needlessly large rod. You can see right off the bat the biggest difference is that it costs less gold now, only 1250 from 1600. And on top of that, it now gives you 60 AP instead of 80. And to just keep on going, it also builds into more items now, of course the Rabadons, the Luden's Echo, and the Zanyas, but it also builds into Archangel Staff and Rylai's. And I did some calculations, and overall the AP that you get per 1 gold spent is actually just a tad bit lower with this new NLR item, but it's not a huge difference. I think this is a pretty cool change because NLR is just such a staple item on so many AP mid laners, and even some top lane APs or even maybe in the jungle. So now that you can get it so much sooner without having to commit for extra kills or CS to finally get it on your first back is a huge plus. And now you have so many more options as to what you want to build it into as well. Oh yeah, and by the way, the Blasting Wand item costs 10 gold less now. But next, let's take a look at the individual items now affected. First, taking a look at all the items that Needlessly Large Rod now builds into. So let's start things off with Rabadons, the item we all go to whenever we want just a crap ton of AP. Well, good news, because now it gives you more AP. This is the one exception to the rule that they're making, because they're actually making Rabadons try to stand out as the item to go to when you want just a ridiculous amount of AP damage. It now costs 200 gold more, but it gives you 5% extra AP amplification, and it now has a third component to building it, of course being the tomb and the new large rod. So the build path does seem overall a bit better, but it may clunk your inventory if you try building this item too late into the game. And this is now the only item offering 120 AP. Following this up, we're gonna take a look at Zanya's, which actually has the reverse effect. Now it costs 300 gold less, and it actually goes down in AP down to 100. So this is a really good example of what Riot is now trying to do with the large rod items. Rabadon's being buffed because it is the only item that just gives you a crap ton of AP, while Zanya's, while giving you a pretty good amount of AP still being 100, also has a ridiculously good active effect being the stasis. So they're trying to make it that you want to buy this item for the stasis effect, not just to have another 120 AP item. And after doing the math on this item, the AP you gain per 1 gold spend is also a bit lower, but again, not too much. And the final large rod item, which I think got hit pretty decently as well, is going to be Luden's Echo, now costing 3000 gold from 3100, so only 100 gold difference, not a whole lot, and you still lose the 20 AP just like the Zanyas. But to try and compensate, Riot actually increased the passive move speed you gain from this item by 3%. Now that's not really a whole lot. The build path is the same, but again, the purpose of this item is not to get it for the extra damage or for the 120 AP, but just to get it for the utility effect, the extra move speed. They're trying to make these items more utility based. So maybe on a champion like Cassiopeia or Twisted Fate, it could still be a pretty good buy, but someone like a Xerath might not want to get it anymore. And then following this, we have the new Archangel Staff, now finally building out of a large rod and a Tear of the Goddess plus 1030 gold. The overall build cost for this item has increased by 300 up to 3000 gold, but it offers 80 AP now rather than 60. And once again, after doing the math on this item, you actually get more AP per 1 gold spent as to the previous iteration of this item. The passive is also unchanged. So overall, I think Archangel Staff is looking like a pretty sexy item, and this is going to be something you want to be getting on many more AP champions. Definitely a pretty good way to make people look at other items more rather than just going for the same items every single game. And the last item building out of the large rod is going to be Rylai's Crystal Scepter. Now this is an item I've always thought was actually quite strong, but I guess now it's going to be even better. The only unfortunate thing is that it now costs 100 gold more, and it now has a different build path instead of a blasting wand. It's again the large rod with the amplifying tomb and the giant's belt, still offering the 100 AP. And it still offers the same HP and everything. But the biggest difference is now the passive effect actually slows for much more. The biggest thing to notice is that an instant AoE ability slows for 40% for 1 second now, rather than the current 1.5 seconds for 15%. Now it's a heavier slow for less time, which I think is much better. And pretty much the same thing happening with the dot abilities and multi-hit abilities. This will make it a lot easier for a champion like a Cassiopeia, a Karthus, or a Brand to chain their abilities one after the other, since the slow ability is much heavier. Overall, a pretty good change for just 100 gold. But next we have the whole handful of items that Riot put a bit more attention to try and intrigue players to buy these items more and not just stick to the same handful of items every single game. The first of those items is going to be the Rod of Ages. So it costs you 100 gold less and you still get 60 AP, but you get a bit less HP and a bit less mana on the base stats. However, on the positive side, the passive effect of Rod of Ages, where it stacks over time up to 10 stacks, is actually much better. The amount of HP you get from the passive is still the same, however the mana you get from the passive is now 200 more and 20 extra AP as well from the passive once it's fully stacked, while of course the growing numbers are twice the amount. And the items to of course finish the Rod of Ages are the exact same. I think it's a pretty cool change, especially on the mid lane champions that'll buy it, not giving you the extra HP, but you get a lot more mana, which synergizes well with Archangel Staff, and you get extra AP as well. Next in line is Nashor's Tooth, which for whatever reason costs you only 80 more gold. But for that 80 gold you get 20 extra AP, which you don't have to bring a calculator out, is actually quite worth it. But the bad part is the fact that it now gives you 10% less attack speed. The main champion coming to my mind is definitely going to be Diana, and I think this item will give her a better mid-game power spike with the extra AP, but it might scale just a bit worse due to the decrease in the attack speed. Riot actually said how the ratio of attack speed to spells favored strong on-hit proc champions too much, so they pretty much reversed the item. Either way, it's looking pretty good. Here's the item I'm personally most excited about, the Liandry's Torment change. For only an extra 100 gold, you get an extra 30 AP. The passive is the same with the magic pen, the percent damage, the HP, but it now builds from a Haunting Guise plus a blasting wand. And also the Haunting Guise costs you 20 more gold, which I mean, who cares? Overall, I think this is a really good change to this item, finally gonna be feeling really strong in the right hands. I'm sure the Vladimir, Rumble, and probably Cassiopeia players are extremely happy. The next one is Will of the Ancients. This is an interesting one because they removed the 20% spell vamp and instead made you heal for 15% of the spell and ability damage that you deal while ignoring the resistances. And you get 33% heal for AoE spells. They are trying to make less dependencies required to make the spell vamp on this item work. And a writer who did the math on this item said that it takes about 50 MR after your penetration for this Wota to be stronger. And now with Sork Boots and penetration masteries, it actually heals for less until the opponent buys MR, at which it then heals for more than before due to ignoring MR, but offers less vamp when you get raw penetration from Void Staff. So this one is definitely quite interesting, not sure how I feel about it. Following this we have Morellonomicon and Athene's, which I'll talk about at the same time because the changes are very similar. The only difference on these items is that they both now require an amplifying tomb for their build path, which overall just makes the build path a lot smoother, making you not have to wait a whole bunch of gold to finish off the item. But everything else remains untouched. And then finally we have our favorite magic penetration item, Void Staff, which now costs you 205 gold more while also giving you 10 extra AP, meaning you now get 0.032 AP per gold spent as opposed to before being 0.0305 AP per gold. Nothing major here, they probably just made this change so that it is more in line with how all the other AP items are being treated at the 80 AP benchmark. Oh, and for people wondering, the Abyssal Scepter changes that they were doing on the PvE have apparently been scrapped, so forget about that. So in conclusion, this makes the 3 NLR items not as tempting except for Rabadon's maybe, and it makes all the other items feel a lot better. But that is it for this video, guys. If you did enjoy it and learn something new, please definitely throw in a like, share it with your friends, subscribe if you have not yet, and also check out my other videos on my channel as well. But I truly want to thank each and every one of you for watching, and I really hope to see you for the next video. Peace.